And we are live. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for Woke Women Wednesday. Dianne Wilkerson here with you this morning. I'm so excited to get right to our special guest. It's like I've been trying to schedule the time, and the timing couldn't be better given the conversations we're having. But you all know how I start every Wednesday. First, giving thanks, to God for allowing us to be here, because He could have done something very different and He chose to keep us, and I appreciate that. But you know what? This is the WWOC Media is a vision, a dream of some very powerful women who 2 years ago this month, because I started in May of 2020, just 2 months into the pandemic. And the irony is they didn't start this thinking about pandemic, but boy, was it timely. We needed to have, they knew it, how important it was and continues to be for us to have a medium to share information on what's going on to and for Black people in a timely fashion. So we're here every Wednesday morning at 11. And then, of course, in the evening at 8, my fierce and fearless city councilor warrior, Julia Mejia, she closes. So I open on Wednesday morning and she closes, and we're always bringing you information. And so that's where we are today. We started off talking 2 years ago, really about all things Black, brown, and COVID, and then became clear that that means everything, because COVID clearly impacted every aspect of our life. And I'm always focusing and talking at every show about the specific impact that it has had on our economy, on Black people, on Black businesses in particular, and how important it is. And so our guest today, I want to say star, stage, and screen, because she's just the beautiful mind, beautiful soul, beautiful vision. But it was so far before COVID when you started the branding and the messaging about how important it is, and the advice you give to Black businesses. Anna Foster, Maven, if you all don't know, call her the Maven, but
Yes.
she is business consultant. I'm going to have you talk about the annual Global Women's Conference, and I want to turn it over to you. And first, tell us who you are and what you do, and then I'm going to give you some questions about where we are today.
Good morning.
Welcome
Good
to Woke Women
morning.
Wednesday.
Good morning, Sister Dianne, Senator Wilkerson. Pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to share, especially with my people and community. So I'm excited to be here, and I thank all of you for the invitation. It's funny because I'm glad you said Anna Foster, because a lot of times I can tell when I'm out and about and people say Anna Maven, and I'm always like, okay, they know me from social media, which Maven is the business name for those of you guys that don't know. And once I chose Anna Maven, Facebook was like, oh, you can't change your name. So I have another page, Anna Foster, as well as a Maven's World, which is our business page. So delighted to be here, and blessings to all of you that are tuning in today. My name is Anna Foster. I was born and raised in Boston, Mass, town of Mattapan. Came from a big family, as most of you know, and presently doing a lot of work in the community, especially for Black women who I love and just truly adore. And we can talk more about that in the Maven Women's Conference. But I do work with entrepreneurs, medium-sized businesses, and over the last several years, more corporations on business development, business organization, brand strategy, as well as diversity, inclusion, and community support. So I do a lot of different things, hence the word Maven. The brand name was chosen, A Maven's World. A Maven is a person who understands, and that's how I approach my work personally and professionally, from a non-judgmental standpoint. And being a person that has undergone and underwent in many trials and tribulations, highs and lows, many mountains. I understand that people go through things, and my purpose to serve within the community is to help them navigate to be their best selves. So that's the work that I do, and it looks different at different times.
So, but this time, Anna, this time, uh, every day, all day, the press is just full of different, commentary about racial reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I said two years ago that when we had the explosion of corporate vetting, I call it
Yes.
emotional vetting, all of the
Yes.
banners that went up, on their websites and the
Mm-hmm.
billboards, Black Lives Matter, and then all of the announcement of all the different funds that they were creating,
Mm-hmm.
to as their idea about what it would take for a racial reckoning.
Yes.
And I said the real test is going to be when the dust settles, a year from
Mm-hmm.
now, 2 years from now, whether we
Mm-hmm.
see diversity in corporate boards, whether we
Right.
see a list of how they're spending their money that includes a sizable amount of Black businesses. So tell me what you
Right.
think, and how, are we moving there? Are we getting there? What do
Right.
we need to do?
Right. So a lot of questions, loaded questions there. I think that one, I want to say corporations are made up of people. Um, and I think all people go through reckonings at some point in their life. And with that being said, it's not surprising at during those times of all the tumultuous activity, balancing that against COVID and everyone being home and quarantined, and watching all of these things, the traumatic with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, um, all of these traumatic experiences playing out on TV. People couldn't run and hide the way they would normally do. And so everywhere you went and turned, it was there and it was present. And I think from our community standpoint, from the Black community standpoint, even though these things have been going on way before you and I were here,
Right.
we came to a point where it was not that we were fed up, because we had been fed up. But when you put so much pressure on anything, it's going to explode. And I think corporations knew that these are people that they were going to be obliged to, had to answer to, that were going to be coming to work, whether it was virtually or physically, on their boards,
Right.
not at the levels that they should be, obviously, but something needed to be done and be addressed. So I think it was a culmination
Mm-hmm.
of all of those things. And you don't want, even though has come to mind, um, with regards to George Floyd, we do not want his death to be in vain. But sometimes I do wonder, but for not COVID and George Floyd, if these conversations
Right.
and some of these actions would not have moved forward the way that they needed to.
Right. You said a lot too, and I would say one word you used. You said, talked about being non-judgmental, and what
Hmm.
it triggered for me is at the beginning of the racial reckoning post George Floyd, when
Hmm.
all of the corporations were talking about how they wanted to change and what they wanted to do. I posted on Facebook that the real test would be not how many Black Lives Matter banners they put on their website or outside their buildings or hang on the highway, but a
Hmm.
year from now, 2 years from now, whether the corporate boards will look any different, whether
Hmm.
their list of contractors that they do business with would
Yes.
be any blacker and browner. And that one of the things that I ask of my people is to be
Hmm.
patient, even for me, right?
Hmm.
To be
Hmm.
patient. By that I mean we have to, if we challenge people to the corporate structure to do better, we're
Yep.
going to have to also allow them space to talk and to act. And it may
Hmm.
not be what we want to hear in the first time around. So I know for
Right.
me, I have to be patient. Like
Right.
you can't take their head off if they don't get it right. So, um,
Right.
this is
But
what you do. So tell
yeah,
me,
and
like,
I think just to kind of tag from the what you your ending statement is, you can't take their head off, but you have to hold them accountable. So it has to be a measure of time with anything that you're doing. I mean, that's what we know even with SMART goals. You know, the T in SMART is it has to be timing. It has to be timed. Otherwise, you'll never get to it. You know what I mean? So, I think patience is important. I think some of the frustration that you see from our community, people of color, is that we feel that it's long overdue.
too long.
Too long overdue. And there's a lot of emotion involved that we have suppressed over so many years, going back to our ancestors. So when people say that don't look like us, well, wait a little bit longer, we feel like we're going to once again be passed over because that has been the practice.
Yeah, 400 years of waiting. Right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, right.
But those that have EQ and IQ, we know that things don't happen overnight. So we
So,
can't just let the emotion drive us.
right. Do you and I know you work with a lot of black businesses, um,
Mm-hmm.
advising. I
Yeah.
guess the other part of me is, on the one hand, I know that you build business over time, and so
Mm-hmm.
you may not be ready on day one for the $50 million, and you
Right.
have to build yourself to that point. And
Right.
so the building is something that our folks often need help with. But the other
Mm-hmm.
side of that is that
Yeah.
often when the corporate or when corporate and government is ready,
Mm.
the only programs that they will talk about are the ones where they will create apprentices. And my position is everybody's not an apprentice. Some of
Right.
us actually have been here for a while, have
True.
are ready, right? For
Right.
that 50 million. Can
Right.
do, right?
Right. But we also have to be mindful that what we may consider ready is not ready for the person that is putting forth um what the benefit may be or what
Mhm.
we're looking for. So I mean, I think entrepreneurs, especially small business owners, we always think we're ready for everything, right? I think that's just how the mind works of creatives and entrepreneurs. Our ideas are the best ideas, and if people don't agree with it, what's wrong with them? So for me, I approach my own businesses as well as clients that I work with that are small businesses from the aspect of being an avid learner
Mhm.
every single day, because things change. What we knew yesterday is maybe different or is going to be different than what we know tomorrow. So if we're not paying attention,
Right.
right, to our
Right.
business and industry, how do we navigate that? And a lot of
That's
times that is the case for entrepreneurs because we're just busy. And as you know, small businesses, we're going to be the marketing director, the CEO.
Just say chief cook, bottle washer,
Right,
the
exact
sweeper,
whatever
the
we need to
receptionist,
do.
right.
Yes, yes. And that does not always make for great businesses to move us and help us navigate to the next level of business. So, learning every day and professional development is high on my list. I don't think I know everything, and I would be concerned if I thought I did. That's when I
Mhm.
worry. So, with my stakeholders, my clients, I always lead with what are they looking for? How can I add value to their space? Because what I learned from that is, one, they're telling me what's going to make them support me, what's going to make them write me a check in business. This is what it makes sure I'm checking off the list. So it's helping me raise the bar as to what I'm offering.
Right, right. So
That's the only way my business or anyone's business is going to thrive and grow, is if you address the needs of the customer or of the client.
that
Um,
makes
and
perfect sense.
and then the other thing I learned from sponsors, partners, and supporters is what other people are doing in the industry. So if I want to be a top conference, global conference, I need to know what other global conferences are doing. And usually they're sharing it with their stakeholders in the ask. But if I get on my call and I'm talking so much about my ideas and pitching from my, what I think should be done, how do I learn what actually will bring value to that space and what is going on in the industry?
Yeah. So one of the things that I always tell my viewers and folks who are watching or listening, again, wwoc.com, is that every time they watch a show, they're going to get some information. So what I want you to do is, and I want to do this twice,
Sure.
is to let people know how they contact Maven's
Sure.
World for
Sure.
advice. So we can do that now, and then we're going to do it again at the end.
Yeah. So
folks, get your pen out. I always tell you, when you come, you better have a piece of paper and a pencil, or get your cell phone so you can put it in your notes. But go ahead, please, and then I have another question for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for allowing me to share. So my website is the Anna Foster, easily, theannafoster.com. And then our brand website is mavensworld.com. And that will also link you to our women's conference, which is in its 10th year. But if someone's looking to consult with me and hire me as a consultant, it would be through theannafoster.com. But if you're looking for information on conference, etc., you can go to mavensworld.com.
So, and that's, I got some more questions for you.
Sure.
And I like to use like just reality and present day happenings. I know you probably saw last week the announcement. I want to say last Thursday morning at like 10 o'clock. Harvard University released the report that they had done. Literally very thorough, 135 pages, I think, a report on their role, on the university's role in slavery, how they benefited, how, what they did.
Right.
And
so they then decided how they were going to reconcile that.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
1 hour later.
Yeah.
They announced the creation of $100 million fund.
Right.
And and you may have seen it, may not. I posted. I said, "Wow, wouldn't that be nice? Were you able to confess your crime at 10, and then decide your own punishment. At 11?"
Right. Well, that's privilege. That's privilege.
Oh my goodness! It is.
That's how privilege works.
Of privilege.
Yeah, that's how privilege works.
But it's when I was calling on my better angels, because I told you, for me, I'm like, what? But I said, wait a minute. We have to be strategic about this, because on the one hand, I was happy about the report, but the bottom line is that that's just not how it works. You don't get to say, here's all of what we did, and here's what we're going to do to make up for it. What?
Right.
Like,
what? Right. And I wholeheartedly agree with you, but it also, and we did identify that already as privilege for those that are watching, but because of that behavior, what it tells me is, one, this has been the activity in the past, which is how privilege works. So it's like when you get called out on it, you're like, who, me? I didn't do, that's the way that's the normal course of behavior. And two, it's important to wonder who is advising them. And it also speaks to why having people of color on boards as advisors ingrained in the culture that can say, no, this is not going to pass. So that's what advisors do.
You know what I call that? I call that my people laugh when I say, but I'm very serious about it. That every corporate leader and government leader needs a special staffer or chief called the chief of wait a minute. Somebody, the only role is it fit to
right,
say, what, wait a minute,
right, right, right,
right?
right,
Wait a
right,
minute.
right, right,
Because it would say, don't you see often like different things that corporations do and you say, wow, did they had nobody who could tell them that
right.
this wasn't a good idea?
Or
Like,
or maybe they did and they just didn't care enough.
that's why I
Yeah,
know the work that you do is so important because I do want,
right,
I believe it. Not that I want to believe it. I do believe that
right.
there are many who would do right if they knew what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times they just don't even. And I'm talking about white. Again, I'm talking about white people. The white
Yep.
the white privilege, like
Mm-hmm.
the very white privilege and supremacy that got them into the to as a that got them into the space as a major player in slavery is the
Yep.
same white privilege thinking that allowed them to decide, yeah, I'm going to confess and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do about it. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, we
Right.
do have like a half $1 trillion in our endowment, but $100 million ought to do it, right?
Right.
And so the thing about it is that, um, and this is really another question to you because I know
Mm-hmm.
that you just said maybe they did have somebody. I said last week that they probably will be able to get some very reputable Black folks to say, "Isn't this wonderful?"
Mm.
Because that's also how it works, and that's
Right.
okay, but it's
Right.
not
Right.
enough.
Right. Right. So again, a lot going on in that in what you just mentioned. Absolutely. It's important one that we're in every room, that we're in every space. And I always think about it, and I'm sure you can attest to it and relate to it. Sometimes you don't want to be everywhere. So but you get up and you're like, if I'm not there and I'm not present, who is going to speak for us? Who is going to
That's
try?
a that's a fact.
It's a
That's a fact.
fact. So a lot of times when we're doing this work and I'm literally right now I'm in Arizona. So my interview started at 4 this morning. I had one before this and it was dark, 4 a.m. because it was a 7:30
Right.
interview. And sometimes, as you know, when doing this work, not even sometimes, most of the time, it's not easy to do. And we do it because we know that we have to be present, not just for us, not just for the people that we carry on our backs, but more so for the next generation.
That's right.
And so over the years, when I started a Maven's World, people would try to segment me into, well, what exactly are you going to do? What exactly is your client? What exactly is this? And for me, not that I move based on passion, but I have to be passionate about projects that I work on. I have to be passionate about change making. If something's already kind of being addressed, is there a need for Anna to show up and add to it? So those are all the things that go through my mind in regards to spaces where I'm present.
Right.
And if I don't need to be physically present and it needs to be addressed, I won't say omnipresent because that's for the most high. But I don't need to be physically present everywhere to do the work.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
To do the
It
work.
is it is challenging. It
Yeah.
absolutely is challenging. I'm curious as to your experience. Like, well, I'm going to deal with the businesses first that you deal
Sure.
with. Kind of just generally, what do you tell them in this environment? What do
Mm-hmm.
you tell them? How would you advise them about how to go about really the whether they have been stunted, stagnated,
Yeah.
suffered loss during COVID, or just building and trying to figure out where to go
Mm-hmm.
in this space. And then I want to talk about that other piece, the people who are making those decisions.
Yeah.
When, like you said, when you're in that room, what do you tell them? Like,
Yeah. Well, and you mean with regards to corporations.
yes,
So I think most of the rooms that I'm in, and most of the rooms for large corporations and mid-sized corporations know that people, they're on watch now, like the antennas are up. So if they may have not been operating at their best, they know that eyes are on them to do so.
Mm. Yeah, I
And
think they
I,
all must have to be feeling and just knowing that, right?
yeah, and
That
so knowing that, it does make people act differently. I will say that. And it's not in the negative sense. It really isn't, going back to what you were saying in regards
right.
to the intent. But we also have to be mindful to always go back to the impact and what the data is saying. So it's fine that they want to do good,
Right.
but when you look at the percentages of women of color, Black women on boards, Black women in leadership positions, funding for Black businesses. All of those things are so low, they're not even worth measuring. Like,
Right.
they're so low. So even if we get an increment of change over the last, say, 5 to 7 years, COVID has just come in and been like, erase that.
Exactly. That's a fact, and that, I want to stay on that point because,
Yeah.
um, my advocacy and my work every day is, at least in the last 2 years, has really been around health related issues because I've been focused on COVID,
Mm-hmm.
um, but also I know where we were before COVID, right?
Right. Right.
So for people to know today that we have, worsened in every health indicator, right?
Right.
But here's the other piece that during COVID, because the city of Austin, for example, well,
Mm-hmm.
nearly every city, every
Mm-hmm.
one of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, and the Commonwealth itself,
Mm-hmm.
and the federal government, when they declared that's the state of
Yep.
emergency
Yep.
in March
20. 20.
2020,
Mm-hmm.
right? What that meant, because I also, I know you do, you educate as we go along. When a government declares a state of emergency, what it means is that they don't have to be bothered with the rules and the process of doing bids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
uh, bidding and so the very things that people use,
Yeah.
the very things that they use to justify not doing business with the folks that you work with, that concerned about, is,
Right.
well, the bidding process. They have to have the lowest bid, which really is not the law anywhere. It's the
Right.
lowest and most responsible bid.
Right. Right.
And so my question right away to the governor and to the mayor in 2020 was, okay, so you're going to just be spending all this money on the
Mm-hmm.
phone. They're calling people. I need you to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Partners in health. They,
Mm-hmm.
got the $90 million no bid contract. This
Mm-hmm.
no bid contract. So can
Yeah.
you call some Black people? If
Right.
can you call some Black people? That maybe you can call
Right.
them this time, right?
Right. Right.
And it
Right.
still didn't work because you know the stats. We
Yeah.
still did, 2021, in the height of COVID, the state of Massachusetts spent $9 billion,
Mm-hmm.
and Black businesses got 11 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know the stats for the city of Boston. So I say that because I just want people to know the uphill battle that we face.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you stated the data on that, because the data, it doesn't lie. It doesn't lie, and we also can walk it back. So with strategy, that's what you do. You have to figure out what the goal is, and then you have to walk it back to figure out how to get there.
That's right. That's
And
right.
we also have to be mindful that it doesn't happen overnight, even though it may seem that we got to these places overnight. But you can't, it's almost like an assignment that's being graded upon. You have to check those boxes. One, you got to be present, right?
That's
You
right.
got to be in the classroom. You got to be at the table to even be considered. Um, and then we got to check those boxes. But sometimes those boxes change.
They sure
you
do.
know,
They
and
sure
then
do.
exactly, sometimes those boxes change. But when you look at data and it being so atrocious in regards to always being an uphill battle for Black people,
Right. During
always.
COVID, one we lost black home ownership.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
like, and you're like, oh my goodness, we were already struggling to try to pump
right.
the numbers up. So now we have another challenge, and I think that's the
Always another
reason.
challenge.
I do think though that one of the reasons why I so appreciate your work is because I think that there's a way to talk about it,
Hmm.
um, and where people will hear you, that you have really a knack for that.
You think so?
Oh, oh no, I know so. And I'm serious about that
Yeah.
because there's a role for the flamethrowers.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
And then there's
So,
a role for the people who literally can sit and speak in the language and a tone that can be heard to say, if you're serious, this is what you do and this is how you do it. And that's why, like I said, I'm always complimenting on Facebook, and
mhm.
praise to, because I know how important it is. I know how easy it is for people are looking for reasons every day in this world, to tell you no. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean
Yeah.
that people think of life and resources as a defined, pie,
Mhm.
and there's only so
Mm.
many. And I say
Mhm.
that as simple as like budgeting process. Here's the
Right.
pie. I got to figure out, when I was in the Senate, I got to figure out, this is our leader. I have
Yeah.
40 senators. I got to figure out how to divide that pie. And so
Yeah.
people are going to ask me a lot of things. And so I'm going to have to say no to a lot of people. And what
Mhm.
our folks don't often understand is that people use a lot of legit and maybe non-legitimate reasons
Mhm.
to determine who they say no to.
Oh, every day.
So it could
All
be
day.
it could be a
Yes.
run in your stocking.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
could be, I don't like the hair, right?
Yeah.
So I've been conscious of that since I walked into the space, because like you working in a predominantly white environment, going to a school, like you have to make sure that you put yourself in a situation, in a space
Mhm.
where people can hear what you're saying. And
Right.
some people do that well, and some
Right.
people don't. I happen to think that you are incredibly adept at that.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you.
and not everyone is, like, just that's the way it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the pie analogy is a great one. It's something that you really can't escape, and it's that adage, one, people do business with people they like, that type of um quote that we used to hear when we were younger, you know what I mean? But it didn't really resonate
That's right.
because we're like, well, what we're doing is so great.
That's right.
You know what I mean? What's wrong with them that they don't like it? But with growth, you realize that you don't need everybody. And I
Yeah,
think that's one of the things that I identify and that I teach others and that I speak to my mentees about is that you don't need everyone. You just need the right people.
that's right.
So am I going to spend my time trying to convince 1,000 people a day to support me, or do I just need to call 5 people?
Or the way
Because
I used to say it to folks. The Bible says, because people stress. I have an event and I only had 50, and I wanted a
yeah.
hundred, and I said, um, I don't profess to be a preacher, but I'm a
Mhm.
student at least. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I cite often, and was the Bible says where two or more gathered, and
That's
that
right.
that is significant to me,
That's
because
right. That's
I don't
right.
think it was an accident. It didn't say we're 200 gathered.
That's
Didn't say
right.
we're
That's right.
2,000 gathered. Doesn't say
Mhm.
we're 20,000 people gathered. It
Come
says
on
we're
now.
two or
Come
more,
on.
right?
That's
And
right.
so we have to be mindful of that, because
Yeah.
like you said, we planning, we got to plan. The fact is that sometimes you can talk to 100 people and only
Mhm.
one person hear you, but
That's
that's the
right.
person you need to hear you.
And that's right. And that's the person that's going to be at the end of the day on the journey, standing with you. And I think we also, as business owners, have to be mindful and intentional about remembering and caring for those people. So that's another thing that I'm big on, is who came before me and paying homage. I never ever forget people that supported me in my journey, ever, ever, ever,
Right.
ever. And that's a big part of who I am. And also, as you said, those two people that showed up, those are going to be your riders at the end of the day.
That's right. That's right.
When things come full circle, those two will still be standing by you. So you have to, I'm really big on loyalty. And it's funny because a friend of mine always says in his quotes, loyalty grants you access.
Mhm.
And I used to say, what? And then over time, for me to lend you my time, my ears, my mind, my strength, and my body,
That's right.
you know what I mean? Because it's only so much that we can do in the period of a day. So that's one of the reasons I created the conference, because a lot of people would reach out to me. And as you know, once you're on social media, everyone has access to you. Some some you don't. So I realized I couldn't be everywhere at one time, which is also great why you have this platform, is so
Yes.
you can reach
Yes.
the masses.
Because I do want, before we leave, you
Yeah.
talk about the conference, and that whole, there's a whole space that you have. But
Yes.
I want to tell, I'm going to segue by telling you a conference story.
Okay.
Um, is it 2018? Trying to
Possibly.
think. I'm trying to think. I was.
When you were in the building?
Did you do 19?
Well, this is our 10th year. So
No, but
we
I'm
did,
saying during
yeah,
COVID
so
because it
we
started. I'm
did,
trying to.
so
So it
we
might.
did, yep, so we did up to 2020, because we usually
Okay,
do our conference in January.
January 2019.
Yes, I
I
believe.
was in the building.
Yes.
And I actually was in the there was a panel, there was a workshop on estate planning,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and specific for those who, caring for elderly parents,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which the one and only Sheena Dancy was doing.
That's right.
I was in that workshop and got an emergency call from home,
Mm-hmm.
from my niece who was watching my mom, who had just come to live with me,
Mm-hmm.
in August of 2018. So this is
Mm-hmm.
January 19. And
Mm-hmm.
she was having an episode, and I had to leave. Like, I literally had to call an Uber and to leave. But
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was so ironic that that's why I was in that workshop to
Right.
figure out what I needed to do around the planning. And I get
That's
that
right.
call. And in
That's
fact,
right.
it started a whole process. And she's now, at the dementia unit
Oh,
at
yeah.
Landmark at Longwood. But I got
Yeah.
that call sitting in the workshop that
Right,
I was
right,
doing
right.
at the Maven conference. And
Florence.
so
Yeah.
just want you to know how important those issues are. You may think they're not, but
Right.
I'm
Well,
here
if
to
I,
tell you.
yeah, I actually know that they are, because that's why we curate the space, and over the years, the myriad and the amount of women that have come to the conference, they don't have to be loud about what they're experiencing it, because as the conference is created by me and I curate those sessions, I'm aware of what we deal with.
That's right. That's
And
right.
not
Well, I'm
every
a witness. Like I said, I'm here to tell you.
So, the goal and the reason it was started is to, one, connect people, people within the community, um, provide them with resources, make sure that even though they may be voiceless or they feel that they're voiceless, let them know that we hear them. And in Boston, it was one of those events that I felt I didn't have when I was growing up and embarking on my professional career. It doesn't mean that it wasn't out there.
That's
It
right.
just means that it wasn't something I was attending on a regular basis. And from that event, which I'm proud to say, there's been so many connections made. We've
That's
had
right.
hundreds of vendors, small businesses, that, being a small business owner, I knew how important it was to have people support my business
Yeah.
and my brand. And so having the marketplace and the exhibitors and having hundreds of small businesses there to sell their goods, talk about their services with the community present, it was life changing. And to see those businesses thriving and growing just tells me that it was definitely something that was
Sure
needed.
is.
So it's so
Sure.
many different components to that. And some of these businesses have gone on to do business with each other.
That's right. That
Yeah.
kind of
You
networking
know?
is just so invaluable.
Yeah.
And we, I'm gonna have to. You got to come back. You got to come back. So
Oh,
the time goes so
absolutely.
quickly.
I am
But I
so
want you
glad
to
I was
do
able to
again
make it today.
next conference date, and again your contact information.
Sure. So this year's conference is our 10th year women's conference, and the title is The Future of Women of Color. So we're examining and pulling back the layers and providing connections, resources, and information for everything full circle involving women of color. This conference for this year is May 26th. It's going to be virtual again. And it's going to be on health equity, which you know a lot about, or health inequity, and diseases, because this is important for me, diseases and illnesses that primarily affect women of color.
It's so much to learn. So again, people who are interested in attending the conference and just connecting with you, your contact information.
So Adam Maven's World on all social media platforms. Again, our website, you can go to mavenwomensconference.com or mavensworld.com, and we're also on LinkedIn.
Thank you. And I said, you have to come back. I just so appreciate, I really appreciate what you do, because there are some people who dabble in it and you stay at it. And it's so important because there's so many people who need that kind of support, advice, direction. The only way we as Black people survive as a people is having a strong and viable, I call it the ecosystem, our economic base.
Right.
Which means Black businesses, which means women-owned businesses. It means businesses of color. And we're going to continue to provide the space for people to, present and advocate, direct, and support.
Yes.
All of that. So I thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And do I have 1 second to quote the African proverb, which most of you, I hope, have heard, is if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together.
That says it all. So, folks, you heard it. I hope you're writing that down. Anna Foster, Maven's World Conference, May 26th.
May 26th, virtually.
May 26th.
But we're going all year. So this year we're doing things, instead of doing one big conference a year, we're doing development, information, resources, everything every month. So it's ongoing.
Important. Folks, remember this. Is my proverb for today is that I know people are frustrated and want to be done with COVID, but COVID's not done with us. So Be smart. Continue to wear a mask when you're in large spaces. Children, adults. The second booster shot, which I'm taking my mom to get hers on this weekend. Just be mindful that we have to protect ourselves and our families. And so sometimes we do things that we don't want to do. I know all the story about I don't want to wear a mask. Well, don't wear it for you. Wear it for your mom. Wear it for your dad. Wear it for your children. Right. And stay safe. We'll be back with you next week. Dianne Wilkerson signing off. Woke Women Wednesday. Don't forget my fierce and fearless warrior sister, city councilor Julia Mejia will be with you this evening. And share. Take this, send this video to a friend. I tell folks on Friday nights, get your cup of wine, your cup of tea, and watch. It's always chock full of information. Our guest again today assured you of that. So thank you. Godspeed. Be safe, everybody.
Be blessed, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.